Good evening. I'm an alcoholic. My mother named me Ron. I hope that you guys in the cheap seats back there can hear me. My voice isn't carrying too well today. My wife was trying to figure out what she wanted to give me a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "You've got everything but a cold," so she gave me a cold. Oh, brother, that's love, I'll tell you. It has been, I guess, pretty close to a year that I did speak in this area over in, where were we, Aberdeen? Yeah.
Unity Day.
Huh?
Unity Day.
Unity Day, yeah. Had a blast. Y'all got that coming up again. I'll be there.
June 10th.
Yeah. Save me a burger. Okay. Yeah. Life keeps happening for me. I believe life keeps happening in Alcoholics Anonymous. So there's been some things, if you heard me over there a year ago, there's been more developments. So kind of hang on, and if my voice will hold up, I will carry you through this mess called the life of Ron. My mother, a very dear woman, she was from a little town north of Fayetteville called Tarboro. My father was from Greensboro. They both left North Carolina during the Great Migration. Depending on what books you may or may not read about that particular time, people were leaving the South for economic reasons, and they headed to the big city. Well, they went to Washington, D.C., and hopefully things would get better. Well, at some point they met, they got married, and had me. My mother got divorced from my father. I think I was 3 months old, and she never remarried. Now, I've talked to a lot of people that said they got mixed messages when they grew up. Try that one. I mean, the woman never dated again. And I'm like, what was it about me that you just didn't want to take a chance, like maybe you want to do this again? I'm told that my father drank. I don't know it because I think I bumped into him a total of 6 times while he was living. But there was no reason for anybody to lie to me about it. I know that alcohol was a priority in his life. And it was too big of a priority, so they went their separate ways. And Mom set out to raise me. Back then, single parents did not exist. She was a woman alone. Oh, I see somebody nodding over there. Okay? And that's just the way it was. It wasn't about right or wrong or indifferent. She was a woman, she was alone. And she said there's some things that you ought to know in order to be a decent citizen and a grown man. She said, 1, always have respect for your elders. Always. Doesn't matter who they are. I asked her, what's an elder? She said, everybody that's older than you. Yeah. So when you greet these people, you greet them properly. Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. Good evening, sir, and so on and so forth. She said, always be polite. She said, ask for what you want. Don't take it, and certainly don't steal it. And when you ask, say please. And if you're fortunate enough to get what it was you asked for, say thank you. Wow. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. Please. Thank you. I'm keeping up with all this stuff. She raised me in a church. Yeah, sure did. I come right out of that hotbed of alcoholism that we lovingly refer to as the Southern Baptist Church. Yes, indeed. Woo! Yeah. I was active in that church, Metropolitan Baptist, Washington, D.C. The place is almost a monument. I was so active, I was a member of the usher board, I was a member of the choir, I was a member of the scouting program. I tell people, I've had a gun in my hand for most of my life. And I learned to shoot in that church. Yeah, I really did. Under the control of the then Boy Scouts of America. We ain't going to go into that. Okay? Leave it alone. Just go ahead and leave it alone. Taught Sunday school there. Became a scoutmaster there. There was no way I was supposed to end up here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Not with a background like that. I don't know about y'all, but coming along, I always had a feeling that there was a mistake made the day I was born. I was supposed to actually be somebody else. I was supposed to be someplace else with somebody else. I never had a comfortable day in my own skin. I always wanted to be somebody else, someplace else, doing something else with somebody else. And one day, all of that changed. You see, with all of the lessons that Mom was teaching me to be a responsible, grown-up adult, there was another set of lessons I had to learn to survive on the streets. Yeah, I call Washington, D.C. the land of the free and the home of the brave, because you got brave real quick in that town or you got buried. It is one very violent city. They taught me some lessons that said, don't trust anybody for any reason. Don't believe nothing you hear and only half of what you see. And above all, always do unto others before they do unto you. Oh, yeah. They taught me how to cuss worse than a sailor. They taught me how to fight. And they said one day fighting won't be enough. They put a knife in my hands and said, you learn how to cut. And then they put a gun in my hands and said, you learn how to shoot. I did. I learned all those things, and one day somebody put a drink in my hand and said, have a drink. Right there, instantly, it became just a little bit more okay being who I was, where I was, the people I was with, doing whatever it was I was doing. People outside of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that don't know us refer to us as those people with the drinking problem. How little do they know? I didn't have a drinking problem. I didn't discover a drinking problem. What I discovered was a drinking solution to every problem imaginable. I would drink at it. I would drink at people. I would drink at you. You make me, I'll show you, I'll get drunk. Yeah. And I just started consuming alcohol at a very alarming rate. My mother wanted me to be a lot of things in life. One of them was a concert pianist. I hated to tell the woman I hate pianos. God almighty, I don't even like the sound of them. That didn't work out. She wanted me to be a scholar. I just did make it through high school with a C average. I was not a great student, but I was a miracle, because most kids that grew up in my neighborhood, when they graduated, their high school diploma was from either Lorton Penitentiary or Occoquan Prison. And I actually walked across the stage of Roosevelt High School and picked up my diploma. Oh, it was a grand affair. Went to the prom. Oh, we had a ball. I got back home the next morning, and my mother looked at me and she said, "What are you going to do?" "What are you talking about?" She said, "It's not a hard question. What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I think I'm going to take some time and find myself." She looked at me, she said, "Fool, you're not lost. You're in my house. I raised you once, and I'm not doing it again." Now, isn't it odd? Did anybody catch the news the other day? They had to go to court to get the boy to leave home? Oh, she was real clear about that. She said, "Now, if you want to go to school," she said, "you can stay here, and I'll help best I can. But know this up front, rent's due." Yeah. So I had to go to school and go to work at the same time. I got in the computer industry when people couldn't spell computers. A computer would not fit in this room. These things were huge. You know, when you consider all the memory banks and stuff, it's unbelievable how much space those things took up in order to keep them cool. Fascinating stuff. I didn't fare too well. Ended up going to work for the federal government, and at some point I had witnessed Kennedy's funeral. Back then, you just like today, young kids in here, I say 9/11, you know where you were. Well, when Kennedy was killed, I can tell you where I was. Well, if any of you old enough to remember that, the Green Berets were lined up as the honor guard on both sides of 14th Street Bridge. And I was wondering, who are these guys with the funny green hats? And before I had gotten out of high school, we had a representative of the Army come and do one of those pep talks, you know, job opportunities and so forth. And I asked him, I said, "Who were those guys with the funny green hats?" And he said, "Oh, that's Special Forces. They are absolutely crazy." My eyes lit up. I mean, instant. I didn't know a darn thing about who they were, what they did. I identified with crazy, and I was going to get there. So into the Army I went. And I started finding out some things about me. I get bored fast. The regular Army just did not offer me what I was looking for, so they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, there's nobody jumping out of that airplane. Let's go do it." You know, so I did, and ended up volunteering for Special Forces, and I became one of the mysterious Green Berets of the 60s. I had found home. You see, I was around a group of people that had a motto. When we work hard. And when we play hard. They drank like I drank. Oh my God. Oh. I remember trying to learn a language when I was a young kid in school, and I think we were studying Spanish, and the teacher looked at me when I was daydreaming one day, looking out the window, wishing I was someplace else. And she said, "Ronnie, you got about as much chance of passing this class as I do of flying to the moon." I said, "And what makes you think this kid from the ghetto is going to Spain?" What? I lost count of how many times I have been around the world. I don't even think about it anymore. Bear with me, there is nothing worse than the common cold other than the medication for the common cold. So off to Special Forces I went, and I'm having a great time of things. My drinking has escalated to a point where it is bizarre. Even by their standards, it was bizarre. At one point, I was consuming about a half a gallon average of whiskey a day. People started to notice. Wow. They said, you ought to do something about your drinking. And I said, I don't drink any more than the rest of you guys. We know how to turn it back on them, don't we? Yeah. And they suggested I go to Alcoholics Anonymous. A suggestion. I took it literal. I had a counselor, and he looked at me and he said, you didn't go to the AA meeting. I said, there's no meeting out there. I said, I went and I looked, and y'all lying to me. He said, there is a meeting out there. Well, I eventually found it. I did the best I could with what I had. I had no intentions of getting sober. There's some young folks in here tonight. Probably somebody has coerced into coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I can feel you. Just wait till I get these people off my back. Yeah. And that's the way I felt. I just wanted y'all to leave me alone. My drinking was my problem, not yours. Besides, I ain't hurting nobody but me. We love to crawl into that lie. I went on like that for about 18 months, almost 18 months to the day. I was in my house. I should have been enjoying the celebration of my youngest daughter's 10th birthday. A buddy of mine was there, and fear hit that we were going to run out of booze. There wasn't nobody drinking but him and me. But that panic, we've got to get to the store because this is getting serious. We're going to run out. And I left the safety of my house. I did not make it a half a mile. I know there's a loving God today because the car that I hit with that family in it hit the guardrail of that bridge and did not go over. If it had gone over the bridge, it would have killed that entire family. I left the scene of that accident, tried my best to hide. Cops caught me. If you're having a problem with a higher power, try this. Get in a fight with a couple of squad cars full of cops. I held my own for a few minutes, but they got the upper hand. I swear they did. Yeah, they hauled me off to the law enforcement center, and I don't know why. God, as I understand him, has one heck of a sense of humor. They let me go. They said, you'll get a court date, but we're going to let you go. And I went home. I could see my life coming to an end that day. There had been a counselor that had talked to me 18 months prior, named Judd B. He passed away here a couple of years ago. And Judd had looked at me and he said, Ron, so what are you going to do about your alcoholism? And I'm like, well, you and me, we're not going to get along too well. I went into a blackout sitting in my house, and when I came to, this was after making a conscious decision to blow my brains out. I woke up from that blackout with a telephone receiver in my hand, and this voice came through. And he said, Ron, what are you going to do about your alcoholism? Well, folks, I'm going to tell you something. From that day to this, there has not been a single coincidence to happen in my life. I refer to them as Godcidences. I don't care. Steal it, use it. I don't mind. Okay? I don't own it. But it's how it makes sense to me. You see, I didn't have Judd's phone number. and he didn't have mine. He left this world, and I never knew how that phone call took place. I never found. And you know what? I didn't need to. He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'll do anything you tell me to do." He said, "Will you come back to the meetings?" I said, "I'll come to the meetings. You tell me where to be, I'll be there." And I came back with a vengeance. People talk about getting into the steps, and they always start at one. How about this? Let's start at the step that comes before one. You ready for it? Huh? You ready? Get in the car. Get in the car. Yeah. People came up with some kind of silly idea about having 90 meetings in 90 days. We didn't have 90 meetings in 9 months in Fayetteville back then. So if you wanted to go to a bunch of meetings, you better get in the car. Yeah. I said road trip one day and looked around, and I had 4 other guys in a VW thing with me, headed to Myrtle Beach, going to a meeting. Get in the car. Somebody says road trip, see how fast you can say shotgun. Yeah. If you drove here tonight by yourself, you're not doing this right. You're not doing this right. Now that's just my personal opinion, but I done said I could have an opinion tonight, so I'm gonna have it. Yeah. There ought to be somebody in that car. See, I learned about the meeting on the way to the meeting, to go to the meeting, to have a meeting on the way back from the meeting. And when you do that, you get neck deep in Alcoholics Anonymous. Yes, indeed. They sent me to a hospital out of Beaumont, Texas. That was fun. I know I've always been a little on the crazy side, but I know I'm not insane. I know that. I pray to God, please let me die, but don't let me lose my mind. I have been on some insane asylum wards, and I know I don't belong there. Them people need help. And they ain't it. Yes, indeed. But I knew that I was not in a good place in the world, because they had me on like the 12th floor of this place, and they had bars on the windows. What did they think was on my mind? And the doors, knobs on one side. Not my side, just their side. I'm not sure what's going on there. That place has a lot of loving memory for me today out there at Beaumont Hospital. It was the first time that I ever took time out to work on me. And I came back to Fort Bragg group. It's been my home group for 36 years. People change groups a lot today. I don't get it. I don't understand it. If there's something going on that you don't like, stay there. Help fix it. I've never abandoned my group, and my group never abandoned me. I had another home group in Korea, but that was out of absolute necessity. I couldn't make the meetings and get back across the Pacific Ocean fast enough there to go to Fort Bragg. That was kind of crazy. But I did everything that people in AA told me to do. It didn't matter. They said wash cups, I washed cups. They were all beat up. None of them had a handle on it anymore. They said, come on, Ron, we're going to cut the grass. So we cut grass. Come on, I'm going to teach you how to make coffee. So I made coffee. I'm going to teach you how to mop the floor. Well, I mopped the floor. I did everything y'all told me to do. At some point, somebody said, you know, you need a little bit more responsibility. They made me secretary and then the treasurer of the group. And I ended up being the GSR of the group that I couldn't find. Yeah. And that was fascinating. I went off to places and went to assemblies and things. I did more traveling. Like, wow, this is fascinating stuff, all this stuff that's going on. And I was traveling around, you know, it occurred to me one day that I wasn't having to check the rear view mirror for the flashing lights. You know, just drive and get there. After serving the Fort Bragg group, I was elected alternate delegate of District 51. Later served as its DCM. And somebody got the bright idea that I haven't seen for quite a while. I hope she's doing okay. That I should stand for delegate of the state of North Carolina. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. It's more headache than most of us want. I can tell you that. And I did. As I look back over the years, everything that I got involved in, it was somebody else's idea. And I like that. And today I'm a little bit leery of people who want positions too much. I don't know, it's just me. But I don't think you should want it too bad. If you have what it takes to do the job, somebody will tap you on the shoulder and say, come on, let's have a cup of coffee. I need to talk to you. So I stood for delegate of the state of North Carolina, and I was selected. I came out of the hat. If you feel like you want to do something for Alcoholics Anonymous, I know I did. It got real hard for me to figure out what my niche was. Back then we were arguing fellowship-wide about a pocket-sized big book. And the winning argument seemed to be you ladies wanted one to stick in your purses. Well, let me tell you, the 43rd conference said, no, you can't have it. Wasn't a justifiable reason. And it was voted down. They asked if the minority wanted to speak, and I was able to get to the microphone first. Sometimes it helps to know a little bit about the history of this fellowship. You see, our founder was a soldier. Yeah. And I said, it may not be a compelling reason to have ladies carry a big book around in their pocketbook, but those of us that serve, and right now, I do believe I'm the only sitting delegate at that time to ever serve on active duty in the military. I said, but what about the soldiers, sailors, the airmen, the Marines, and the Coast Guardmen that are trying to work the principles of this program and do everything that they can do? We need a volume that will fit in the combat cargo pocket of a field uniform. The gentleman behind me called the question. It passed almost unanimously. And that was my personal to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I served another year on the 44th panel and then did 2 years as chairman of the state. I got out of service at that point because that's enough, and I retired. I retired and went into business. My mother had wanted me to be a musician, and I became a classical guitarist and teacher. My specialty is extremely young children. My youngest guitar student was 3. God, I missed that little rascal. I don't know how old he is now. But I was good at it. I'm still good at it. Fascinating. traveled with children all over the country. I've been given a lot of accolades in the military and out for doing various things, but I tell you, the greatest gift that's ever been given to me is to have a parent turn over their child to me, half a gallon a day drunk, and say, when are you coming back? A week? If you need anything, let me know. Yeah. That's a gift. That's a gift. And it's the kind of gift, we talk about the grace of a loving God. What's grace? An unearned gift. Unearned. I didn't do anything to get it. But it tells me this. I'm supposed to do something with sobriety. I'm just not supposed to sit around and accumulate time. Anybody can do that. I'm supposed to do something. Doesn't matter what it is. People look at me and they say, hey, Ron, what'd you do today? Well, when I was kind of young in the program, I'd say I didn't drink today. They said, that's wonderful. A little while later, they said, what'd you do today? I didn't drink today. That's great. That's great. You're doing fine. I don't know exactly when it happened, but somebody said, what'd you do today? And I said, I didn't drink today. He said, look, fool, I didn't ask you what you didn't do. I asked you, what did you do? It's time for you to get busy. Wow. What did you mean by that? Well, a lot of us get tossed by the wayside on education for one reason or another. I got out of the Army with two associate degrees and a Bachelor of Science in Aviation Management. I went to school at night to study guitar, and my instructor said, you need to go to a university and get a degree because this is just not going to work for you. So my second bachelor's degree was in music art. Twice I have graduated magna cum laude. Coincidence? Those are Godcidences. Do something with sobriety. I don't know how many young people come over to me and said, how in the world do you maintain such a high GPA? I said, are you willing to hold a conversation, or are you just passing the time? And a lot of them, didn't want to hear what it actually took. And some of them said, yeah, come on, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if you tell me how to do that. See, nobody had ever taught them how to learn. I know how to learn. I learned how to drink. I learned how to drink so good, I can't unlearn it. I can arrest it, but I cannot unlearn it. Yeah. So I ended up getting 4 degrees. If you got your mind playing with that idea, go for it. Stop talking about it, go do it. Yeah. I had always taken good care of my mother. She lived in Washington. One day I was in a class and I got the phone call that nobody wants to get. I wish on no man, no woman, that my mother had been involved in an automobile accident and was in an ICU ward at Washington Center Hospital. Well, I got in the car and I beat feet to Washington. And here's my mother. She's broken in 3 places down one side. Some lady had come and picked her up to take her to a senior citizen dinner at church. She never made it back home. So I was going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth every weekend. I did not miss a weekend. I logged so many thousands of miles, I was going crazy. And I finally came to the conclusion that this woman who had been totally independent all her life, raised me to be independent, was no longer going to be able to function by herself. And I made this decision to pack her up, bag and baggage, put her in the car, and I brought her home with me. If you know somebody that's a 24/7 caregiver, don't go up to them and say, "Oh, I know how you feel." Don't do that unless you've done it. That's the hardest thing I think I have ever done in my life. My mother was 90 when I moved her in the bedroom across the hall from me. She was bedbound. When she finally passed away, they had different people came and they said, as I'm listening to the radio calls, a well cared for female, age 93. I took care of her. She never laid in filth. She never missed a meal. See, she taught me how to cook, how to wash, how to sew, how to iron, all of that. I could do that before I was 8 years old. Let me tell you something, I needed to have all those skills. Yeah, because every single one of them came into play. We took her back home to Washington and buried her with her brother, who had been my uncle and the only father figure that I ever knew. I continued teaching. By now, my daughter, my youngest daughter, is getting married, and she presented me with my first grandchild. My oldest daughter, who we won't even get into that one, presented me with a grandchild, her daughter. And then the youngest one, they got divorced and she got remarried and had another one. So that made 3 granddaughters I have. The middle granddaughter got all cute on me, got married, and presented me with my first great-grandson. Woo! Now, the last time I talked to some of y'all might have been there, my second great-grandson was, as we old paratroopers would say, was standing in the door. Bun in the oven. Y'all don't get it. Okay, don't worry about it. Well, little Benjamin did get born. And he was just the cutest thing in the world. Absolutely. 1 month old. I was there. I made it for that one. At 1 month old, he went in the hospital for a checkup. Something was up, and his mother said, something's wrong, and I keep taking him to the ER, and nobody seems to know what's going on. And finally, one doctor looked at him and said, "How long have you been here?" And she told him and said, "Come with me now." The child was admitted within about 10 minutes with a brain aneurysm. He spent his second month of life in a hospital in Raleigh. They operated on him one night for 3 hours. It was unsuccessful. Rescheduled another operation for him the following morning, and he underwent 9 straight hours open brain surgery. You're going to hear this told to you if you haven't already. If you're going to worry, don't pray. And if you're going to pray, don't worry. I used to think y'all were kind of silly when you said that. But I can tell you this, prayer works. I go to a cigar lounge. That's about as far as this is about as far as I get away from home. I don't travel much anymore. And I got to know a gentleman who's the chief of chaplains of the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg. He was close friends with another chaplain who had two of his sons that were students of mine. Now, prior to this, I had never met Randy. And I told Randy what was going on because he could see something was on my mind, and he said, folks, in a cigar lounge, let's put the cigars down and join hands. Let us pray. And it was total silence in that lounge. In less than 48 hours, there was a prayer chain running coast to coast from the southern border all the way into Canada and a few foreign countries. And we prayed hard. I didn't know what God's plan for Benjamin was. I just told him, please don't let your plan be for this great-grandfather to stand over the grave of a 2-month-old. Because it was really touch and go. We thought we were going to lose the boy. I wish you could meet Benjamin. He's the happiest little kid you have ever seen in your life. He's about right at 9 months old now. And if he's not laughing, he's asleep. He's just an absolute bundle of joy. I would have been drunk as a skunk trying to get through the emotional upheaval that I was going through. But you guys showed me a way. Said, practice these principles in all your affairs. Every day in Alcoholics Anonymous is not going to be peaches and cream, folks. There's some rough times ahead. What did Bill say? We are sure to meet one another as we trudge this road of happy destiny. But there's some pitfalls and boulders and stumbling that's going to go on. Inside of 1 year, I had developed a kidney stone. That was a pretty serious operation. The doctor looked at me after it was over and he says, I lied to you. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I thought it was a stone. It was a rock. He said, we got half of it. He said, I'm going to tell you something. The other half is still in there. And we have an agreement between God, the doctor, and myself. If the rock will leave us alone, we're going to leave it alone. Yeah. Right after that, I had found a little annoying bump on my fourth finger of my left hand. As a guitarist, that's a fairly important finger. And I went to a doctor and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, what do you suggest? He said, well, why don't we take the bump off? Cool idea. And he did. No more bump. He said, come back in whatever it was, weeks and a couple of weeks there, and we'll change the bandage and all, and we should have the biopsy back from CDC. I've always known when I was in deep trouble in a medical facility. They actually get busy and start doing something. Yeah. And I had my surgeon and another apprentice surgeon both trying to fit through the same door at the same time. I said, oh my God, I'm doomed. And he looked at me in the most wonderful bedside manner and said, you're retired military. I said, yeah. He said, where do you want to go, Walter Reed or Chapel Hill? I said, what's going on? He said, your biopsy came back, you've got cancer. I'm like, what? He said, it's terminal. I went to Chapel Hill because I did not want my mother. Walter Reed was only a mile from where we lived in Washington. And there was no way I was going to be that close and she not find out about it. And I didn't want her upset over it. I am a survivor of terminal cancer now. I was the 9th reported case in the world. I'm the first survivor and been cancer-free for over 9 years. Had a heart attack right after that. Yeah. I believe that the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, through a loving God as I understand him to be, does not put any obstacle in front of me that he has not given me the longevity and quality of sobriety to see it through. I can't deal with your problem or yours or yours or yours or yours. It's too much for me. But the one that he puts on my shoulders, he has given me the tools that I need to deal with it. So every time, when life gets a little rough and you say, why is it so hard on me? There's the old story, when we all sit around the room and say, throw your problems in the middle of the floor. When the meeting's over, everybody reaches down and picks up the problem they came with. And there's a reason for that. It doesn't matter what the obstacle is, folks. It doesn't matter. We will get through it. We will get through it together because we're all walking on the same road. My mother left this life never knowing that I was a cancer and heart patient. I got so cool with it, we had the same cardiologist. Yeah. And I had talked to him. I said, can you do this? He said, oh yeah, not a problem. Yeah. And they worked with me. And she never had to carry that burden. At 93 years old, I know one thing about the elderly. They live in fear. They live in fear. And I also learned one other thing from her, because it takes a lot of strength to be a 24/7 caregiver. I'm not talking about the muscular strength. That'll eventually wear you down. But I'm talking about the strength in here. You got to be strong to take care of somebody. And it just went on and on and on. But I didn't. When she left, she was laying in the bed, arms folded across her chest. She was totally at peace. And I became aware that the very best that I can hope for, no matter what I accomplish, no matter what I accumulate, the very best I can hope for is to leave this life in bed, asleep, at home. That's as good as it's going to get. I hope I'll leave you with something today that you can take with you. If you're new to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and you've gotten something here today, know this: you can't keep it unless you give it away. You must give this thing away. We become selfless instead of selfish. I want to thank y'all for listening to me. The good Lord made sure I was supposed to be here, and He got my voice through it tonight. I wish you all the happiness. I wish you peace of mind, of soul, of heart. And may each of you know truly and comprehend the word serenity. God bless you.